You ever have that moment? You make a big decision, maybe about a job or a relationship, or even just something small you say, and boom, this weird, like, detached feeling hits you. It's like you, the person thinking right now, you're just sort of following orders from this hidden part of you that's maybe scared or really old. That's the shadow presence, isn't it? The one that kind of speaks through weird symptoms or fears you can't explain or getting stuck in the same emotional traps. Okay, let's unpack this.
That feeling, that internal friction, where you sense there's this current pulling you along underneath the surface of your rational thoughts.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're digging into. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we're exploring what you might call a shadow government, a kind of parallel self, running things unconsciously. Our goal today isn't just to notice that feeling of being off. It's to try and translate what those symptoms, those compulsions are actually trying to tell us. Get some real understanding.
Yeah, and it's the familiarity of it that gets me. It's like being haunted, but like by a version of you that never really got to live. You know, the kid who wanted to scream but learned to smile instead, or the adult who perfected the performance. But I think most people figure this buried stuff is just like old memories gathering dust somewhere. You're saying it's much more alive than that.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a passive archive at all. Freud saw the unconscious as this dynamic living underworld. It's constantly active. It's running our defenses, assessing threats, and yeah, often tripping us up because it's stuck on an older, maybe outdated survival program.
Yeah.
And the main tool it uses to lock away things that feel unbearable, painful truths, forbidden desires, is repression, or Verdrängung, as Freud termed it.
Repression, right. I think people usually hear that and think it just means, forgetting, pushing something out of your mind.
Yeah, but that misses the force involved. Repression isn't gentle forgetting. It's an active, ongoing effort. Psychic energy is constantly being used. Think of it like the psyche doing emergency surgery. It has to cut out something unbearable, a huge desire, a trauma, deep shame, and seal it off behind defenses for survival. But the problem is, the thing that's sealed away, it doesn't die. It mutates. It morphs into chronic anxiety maybe, or a weird compulsion, or that repeating pattern you mentioned.
Wow. So we think we're making fresh choices day to day, but really, we could just be acting out verdicts from this internal court that got set up when we were, 7 years old to cope?
Precisely. And that's why the symptom can be so insistent, so loud. It's the repressed stuff trying to push its way back into consciousness. That internal pressure builds up, takes a huge amount of psychic energy to keep those walls up, Which might explain why so many people feel just drained, chronically exhausted, even when there's no obvious physical reason.
That makes so much sense, that deep exhaustion. It clicks when you think you might be fighting this invisible war against your own past every single day. And it seems especially obvious when you look at those self-sabotage loops, the compulsion to repeat, like someone who keeps ending up in the exact same kind of relationship drama or hits the same wall in their career every few years. You think, come on, I'm smart. I learned this lesson. Why is this happening again?
That's the trauma repetition complex showing up. And the pattern isn't accidental, it's specific. Take that Anna archetype you brought up, always drawn to partners who fade away, just like her father did when she was 5, without explanation. Consciously, she doesn't want that pain, but her unconscious. It's fiercely loyal to that original wound.
Loyalty to the ghost. That's so powerful and, confusing. If the goal isn't just more suffering, what's the point? What's the payoff in repeating the pain?
Well, the payoff is often this illusion of mastery. The unconscious forces a replay of the scene, not necessarily to get a happy ending this time, but to try and finally control that moment of original hurt. If she can see the leaving coming, maybe even push them away first, she avoids that sudden, overwhelming helplessness she felt as a kid. See, the unconscious isn't really invested in happiness, it's invested in repetition. Because repetition feels predictable, and predictability feels like control, even if it's control over something painful.
So that pattern, the complex of the vanishing other, it's not just being afraid they'll leave, it's actively preparing for them to leave. The internal rules like, don't get too attached, brace for impact, be ready before they can surprise you. That's wild. We build these walls to keep pain out, but they just box us in.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is thinking about these complexes differently, not just as problems or diagnoses, but as these dynamic, protective structures.
Yeah.
They're originally built in moments of extreme distress, cleverly designed for survival then. The tragedy is that their definition of safe, even if that means being small or lonely or perpetually tired, is still running the show decades later.
Okay, let's talk about those structures, the architectures of defense. Maybe start with the complex of forbidden radiance. I think a lot of people know this one. That classic self-sabotage, just when things are about to get really good. You nail the project, get the promotion, and bam, you get sick. Or start a huge fight, or just freeze, can't finish the last step. Why are we so terrified of success sometimes?
It often comes down to an old learned equation. Visibility equals danger or punishment. Imagine a child really proud shining, but the parent reacts badly, maybe with indifference, or maybe they actively shame them, like don't get a big head, or you make others feel bad. So achievement itself gets wired up with the feeling of danger, a potential rejection.
And the unconscious acts on that danger signal.
It does. It finds ways to reduce visibility, to dim the light. For one person, maybe it's a sudden migraine right before the big presentation, the body literally shuts down. For someone else, it could be this bizarre impulse to just walk away from a project right after it gets praise. So they're always starting over, never quite arriving. The underlying loyalty is to that old rule, don't outshine, it's not safe.
Wow, so the fear isn't failure, it's the potential cost of being seen.
Yeah.
That seems like it connects to that other thing you mentioned, the internal police force, the part that watches over our desires.
Yes, that brings us to the complex of guilt for desire. And the main enforcer here is what we call the superego. In psychoanalytic terms, the superego is like our internalized moral compass, but it's built from the rules, the shoulds and shouldn'ts we absorbed from our parents and early environment. It's a judge inside.
So if as a kid your basic needs, needing help, wanting attention, just wanting love, if that was met with shame or ridicule, or maybe the parent just withdrew, then the superego builds this really strong internal law against wanting.
Exactly. The law becomes do not want, do not need. Any authentic expression of desire then triggers this intense automatic guilt deep down. And that's why you see people push away intimacy right when it's offered, or why they might totally freeze up when they finally have real freedom to choose. They're essentially punishing themselves for daring to want, for being potentially too needy or too much. The symptom pushing away, freezing, actually serves the defense mechanism.
That's so tragic. The adult is consciously striving for connection, for freedom. But this exiled younger part is still absolutely convinced that getting what you want leads to disaster.
And that's why this buried stuff never truly stays buried. It has come out somehow, it erupts. Maybe as free-floating anxiety or sudden rage that seems out of proportion, or a dip into depression. This is what's meant by the return of the repressed. We often wonder, why am I having a panic attack now? Everything's fine.
Right. We think time heals all wounds, but the unconscious. It doesn't track time like we do, does it?
Not with calendars, no. It keeps time through resonance, a smell, a particular tone of voice, even a type of silence. If it resonates with the original scene where we learn to shrink or be quiet, boom, we're suddenly plunged back into the feeling of that room emotionally. The buried feeling rushes forward, demanding to be felt, to be expressed.
So my anxiety about my boss today might not really be about my boss. It could be that their posture or the way they sighed just happened to echo my father, who always seemed disappointed or overwhelming.
Precisely. The symptom nearly always points back to the past, even if it looks like it's about the present. This is why dreams are considered so incredibly valuable. Freud called them the royal road to the unconscious, because when we sleep, the ego's defenses, the censorship relaxes a bit, and the exiled parts, they get to speak, but often in code, in symbols.
So we need to learn the language, decode the riddles. What are some common ones?
Well, dreaming of falling. It's usually not about a literal fear of heights. It's more often about the feeling of losing control, being ungrounded, maybe reflecting a time you felt dropped emotionally with no one to catch you, dreaming you're being chased. Often you're running from a part of yourself, a feeling like guilt or shame, or even a powerful desire that's finally catching up and needs to be faced. Even something like a really intense fear of mess or disorder. It could be translating an early life that felt chaotic, unpredictable, where trying to impose order felt like the only way to survive. The symptom, the dream, the riddle. It's the messenger. It's screaming in the only language it has that something important got buried alive and needs attention.
Okay, so the most liberating thing isn't actually to defeat the symptom or get rid of it. It's to finally understand the message, to recognize the messenger.
Exactly. The unconscious isn't some dark prison we're stuck in forever. It's more like a conversation we've been desperately avoiding. These complexes, these defenses, we don't need to attack them. They literally kept us alive back then. The shift comes when we can finally meet them. Acknowledge their original purpose. The deepest understanding often isn't intellectual, it's somatic. It's that lump in your throat, that tremor in your body, that dawning realization, oh my God, I haven't been choosing my life. I've been reenacting my survival.
And when we're in therapy or even just reflecting deeply like this, and suddenly these intense feelings come up, like strong distrust or anger, or this deep longing directed at, say, the therapist, or just the process itself, that's part of it too. That's the past showing up.
That is the core idea of transference.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial. The unconscious is projecting its unfinished business from your very first, most formative relationships. The anger you feel here might belong to the father who wasn't there. The longing might be for the caregiver who couldn't meet your needs. It's not random. The psyche is brilliant in a way. It's using this safe, contained space to finally allow you to feel, maybe even express, what was impossible or dangerous to feel or say back then. Healing starts right there, in the witnessing, without judgment.
So when we can finally turn towards that complex, that scared, rigid, protective part and genuinely say, okay, I see you, I get why you're here, you were trying to keep me safe, that changes everything. The fortress doesn't crumble because we attacked it. It starts to soften because it was finally seen for what it was. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, that shift from battling the shadow government to recognizing its original loyal intention. That's the pivot, that's the turning point, because you are not your symptom. You're not your complex. You're not your defense mechanism. You are the space between all that. You're the witness. And from that space of witnessing, choice becomes possible. You can start to respond to your history differently, instead of just being condemned to repeat it. The aim isn't to erase the wounded part, but to finally let it live. Not in the shadows, but acknowledged, in the light of your own truth.
Just sit with that for a second. If you felt any flicker of recognition just now, that little tremor under the surface, that's it. That's the quiet whisper of your own history asking to be heard.
Which, of course, this raises an important question. Now that you're starting to maybe translate the messenger's language, to recognize these powerful forces that might have been choosing for you, what's one small thing, one specific action you might choose to take today to acknowledge or honor that part of yourself that had to go into exile? The session, in a way, has just begun.